ever heard of the language Esperanto? If not, here's some information about it. Esperanto was created by a Polish doctor named Ludwik Leszczar-Zamenhof. I probably said his name wrong, but I don't speak Polish. He decided to create the language in the late 1800s because in the city of Bialystok, where Ludwig grew up, there was a very diverse society that was filled with Polish people, German people, Russians, and Yiddish-speaking Jews. Everyone spoke a different language and looked at each other with distrust. On July 26, 1887, he published a book. The title, when translated to English, means First Book. Ludwig used this book to introduce the language Esperanto, a language he created to allow peace and harmony around the world. The language Esperanto comes from English, French, German, Greek, Italian, Latin, Polish, Russian, and Yiddish, and had something to do grammatically with Asian languages such as Chinese. Ludwig did not want to replace everyone's first language with Esperanto, but instead make Esperanto a worldwide second language. Ludwig believed this would help lead to peace and understanding. Ludwig purposely made Esperanto easy to understand and to learn. Nouns don't have a gender, no irregular verbs, and everything is spelled exactly how it sounds, no silent letters. Later, Esperanto spread to Asia, North America, and South America, Africa, and the Middle East. Esperanto pretty quickly was adopted by many people and countries. After World War I, however, the League of Nations delegate from Iran proposed to make Esperanto the official language of the international relations. The French, however, did not like this idea and vetoed the proposition because they felt that French would, quote-unquote, lose its position of prestige in diplomacy. Then, in 1922, the French went even further and banned teaching Esperanto in universities, saying it was communist propaganda. This is very funny because in Russia, people who spoke Esperanto were assumed to be a part of an international espionage organization. And if you want to hear even more stupidity about banning a language, Hitler said that Esperanto was evidence of a Jewish plot to take over the world. He then sent the Gestapo to go find any of Ludwig's descendants. All 3 of his kids died during the Holocaust, and so did a bunch of other Esperanto speakers. The United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, also known as UNESCO, joined a relationship with the Universal Esperanto Association. In 1985, UNESCO made a resolution encouraging countries to add Esperanto to their school curriculum. For years, China has been offering Esperanto at some of its universities.
And a university in Poland teaches completely in Esperanto. So what are the key questions that the author is trying to answer?
The key questions the author is trying to answer are, why did Hitler and Stalin hate the language of peace, Esperanto? In the article, they explain that due to hardcore ignorance from both men, they, like many others, were scared of something new and immediately deemed as bad. Both men made up random reasons to ban the language. Hitler's being that it was a Jewish plan to take over the world, and Stalin just thought that if you spoke the language, you were a spy. Questions that I thought of while reading this were, if Esperanto were still being spoken nowadays, and if so, where? And the other question was, why I've never heard this language. The premise of it seems so interesting and like something that could truly help the world, and yet I've never heard of it. So for question 1, if Esperanto is still being spoken nowadays, yes, it is. When I searched up whether or not people still speak Esperanto, it came up with 2 very different answers. One was around 100,000 people, and the other was up to 2 million current speakers. So I'm not really sure which one, but yes, people do still speak Esperanto. The reason I've never heard this language is because Canada doesn't have a large population of Esperanto speakers, and even though my family's from Brazil, they only speak Esperanto in certain areas of Brazil. Esperanto is spoken a lot more in countries like Brazil, Russia, the US, Germany, and a surprisingly long list of more countries.
The events in this article spanned an entire century. From the birth of the language in 1887 to the time of this article's writing, the Esperanto language survived despite the poor reception from Hitler, Stalin, and France. The world wars likely have slowed down the spread of this language, especially in World War II, as the major amount of people in Europe were massacred, including those in Poland, where the language originated from. This article is very important to know about because very few people have heard about the language of Esperanto, even less of those who know about this language's history. In today's day of age, where cultural preservation and appreciation is ever so more important, learning about minority languages is a very important step in preserving history. Additionally, as English and Mandarin become the prominent choices for second languages, fewer and fewer people take the opportunity to learn a language like Esperanto's. We chose this article because of the interest in how a language of peace can be misinterpreted, criminalized, and outcasted by both the Allies and Axis power alike. While this article does an excellent job expressing the history of the Esperanto language, improvements can be made by further detailing the criminalization and outcasting of those who spoke the Esperanto language. Although this article is titled Why Hitler and Stalin Hated Esperanto, the 135-year-old language of peace, this article details little on why Hitler and Stalin both disliked the language. My opinion on this article is that although this article does a very good job of conveying the importance of the Esperanto language in history, it falls short of its headline. But an article that spreads the awareness of a language that should be preserved and spread is better than no article at all. Turner's opinion of this article is that Esperanto should be the world's second language. Ludwig Zamenhof created an easy-to-learn language so that different types of people could communicate together. Esperanto was primarily influenced by English, French, German, Greek, Italian, Latin, Polish, Russian, and Yiddish because these languages Ludwig could fluently speak. But Esperanto had a striking resemblance found in Mandarin and Cantonese. From 1887 to 1922, Esperanto was picking up pace and gaining popularity around the world. So much more people who would be speaking Esperanto if the French didn't deny it, becoming the language of the international relations in 1922. And if Hitler and Stalin hadn't killed and prosecuted Esperanto speakers, how the world would be more united by Esperanto.